Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd and the best teeth in the game. It's time for another edition of Let's Argue, where I go on the internet, I take your hot takes, your unpopular opinions, your tough questions, I respond to the best ones, literally in this video. You know what it is. Let's go! Jesus is King will never drop. I don't know. I mean, the release date does seem around the corner. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed back, though, and the album title gets changed. And a bunch of the songs from the record get scrapped, and then they leak onto the internet. But hey, it'll drop in some way, shape, or form at some point. The Beatles records pre-Rubber Soul are nowhere near as good as boomers say, and even early Beach Boys records are miles ahead of what the Beatles were doing. Okay, I get that aesthetically and creatively, that pre-Rubber Soul era Beatles is like not as fun or as out there or as groundbreaking or I guess in some respects as influential, but still, you would be a fool to completely write off the pre-Rubber Soul era. I mean, the songwriting on some of those records, especially Hard Day's Night, especially Help, is fantastic. Yesterday is literally one of the best Beatles songs of all time and can go toe-to-toe with any song off of any post-Rubber Soul record. Don't at me. No, in fact, at me and you'll be wrong. K-pop on average is better than J-pop, but the best J-pop is way better than the best K-pop. I agree with what you're saying on the surface here. I mean, there is K-pop out there that I like, but the best J-pop I think is better than all of it, whether you're talking about Kyary Pamyu Pamyu or Perfume, or even some poppier tracks off of the new Haru Nomuri record. But personally, I don't really see K-pop and J-pop as being all that comparable. I think both generally feature different aesthetics, different artistic methodologies. I think the only reason that it seems kind of sensible to compare them is because one is K-pop and one is J-pop. Yes, like the genre titles are similar, but the artistic styles, in my opinion, are vastly different. Vastly different. So while yes, you can compare any genre to another genre, I still don't see K-pop and J-pop as being all that comparable. Cal Truchesta is the best roommate ever. He supports your channel, appears in your videos for better content, came back from the dead, has a good sense of sweater style, etc. I mean, who wouldn't want a roommate like him? Yeah, I mean, you guys see him and hear him every once in a while when it's kind of funny, but one thing you guys don't do is smell him. Hot dog water. I'll say that. Hot dog water. That's the one thing I'll say. No musician works with other artists and genres as wildly different as Skrillex, Justin Bieber, A$AP Rocky and Ferg, Korn, Muramasa, Ty Dolla $ign, Damian Marley, Ellie Goulding, Bruno Mars, Chance, The Doors, Rose, Pusha T, Diplo, Brockhampton, Aluna George, Mr. Wazzo. Need I give more? No, you do not need to give more. However, I would say that some of these collabs were not good. So I wouldn't necessarily sell the amount of artists Skrillex has worked with as a good thing when one of those collaborations is the path of totality, okay? I would not. All of that being said though, I do think that Skrillex's versatility is pretty impressive. I do think that he is underrated a little bit as an artist. I don't think he gets quite as much respect as he should. I think Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites still to this day is a really good project and certainly a pivotal moment for dubstep at large. Unfortunately though, I think that there's just like a lot of bad, very commercial, very formulaic music in his catalog, and I think that just generally there are a lot of people who are repulsed by popular trendy music for whatever reason that they are. I myself will admit that much of Skrillex's discography is pretty flawed, but again, the points of it that are respectable, I think he doesn't get enough credit for. Nails is the band of the decade. I don't know if I would fully agree, but it certainly is arguable. Everything Nails has dropped thus far this decade has been pretty fire, really within that 8 to 10 range, and even their sophomore record that did underwhelm me slightly upon release initially has grown on me. If they're not the band of the decade, generally speaking, they're certainly the band of the decade in my view when it comes to loud, heavy, aggressive, explosive music. Certainly. Just amazing consistency and amazing power and brutality in their music, just unparalleled. People that think we shouldn't classify bands by some kind of genre system are idiots. I don't agree that they're total idiots, because I do understand some of the arguments against genre classification, because genres really can only do so much to describe what an artist or an album is doing. In some cases, culturally speaking, they can be kind of limiting, maybe even have a negative effect on artists or artistic scenes. I mean, look at chill wave and what happened to the entire scene of artists surrounding that when the wave for chill wave started to pull back in. All that being said, though, what is wrong with genres? I mean, honestly, at this point, they're a necessity, especially in the incredibly saturated musical age that we live in. People want to listen to music that they like. They want to hear kinds of music that they prefer. They want to hear particular aesthetics and styles and expressions and sounds. And how are we to categorize all these things so that people could find them more efficiently? Sure, I think that there are alternative forms of categorization outside of the genre sphere that are commendable, like categorizing music by mood and stuff like that. But, I think that we shouldn't limit ourselves. We shouldn't limit ourselves. If we want to categorize music by a certain way that allows the audience ease when it comes to discovering the kind of music that they like, let them do it. It's not a bad thing. The line in Thrift Shop about R. Kelly's sheets did not age well. It didn't? I mean, R. Kelly's pretty much put away now, and he has been widely exposed for being the pervert and the weirdo that he is. I would say the line has aged better than much of Macklemore's lyricism over the years. I mean, sure, it's a little corny, but that quality about it was true when it initially dropped. I think, certainly with R. Kelly being in the position that he's in currently, the line is more relevant than it was previously. So I don't think it's aged all that bad. Flume's breath stink. Why? Because the man eats a little ass. I mean, he brushes his teeth probably. Leave him alone. Death Grip's fan base has had more of a cultural impact than Death Grips itself. In what way? And how is their cultural impact measurable in a way where you can even separate it from the cultural impact of Death Grips itself, given that the audience wouldn't even exist to have whatever cultural impact you're talking about if Death Grips wasn't even here? I mean, you could even argue that whatever cultural impact the Death Grips fan base has had, it is by extension of Death Grips. So, yeah, I don't agree. When it comes to poetry and music, nothing tops David Tibet and Current 93. Yeah, when it comes to poetry in rock music and in folk music, I definitely have huge respect for David Tibet's work. I would also say that one should not write off Mr. Lou Reed, who is one of the greatest rock poets of all time. Madvillainy cannot be a 10 because it lacks the consistent cohesion and emotional depth of a perfect rap album. I don't think everything needs to be emotionally deep in order for it to be good or perfect or whatever. And consistent cohesion, I mean, the record in my view is pretty consistent. MF Doom has a pretty consistent rap style. Madlib has a pretty consistent production style. I don't get what you don't think is consistent about the record. I mean, sure, it's a little zany and all over the place and disjointed because all of the tracks don't necessarily flow into each other thematically or anything like that, but the potpourri vibe of the record is the consistency, is the style, is the aesthetic. So yeah, I don't agree. Bands like Swans and Daughters and albums like Schlagenheim represent a new era of underground music comprised of experimental rock, heavily reliant on music theory, and although this existed in the past, it is seeing a much wider audience and newfound popularity in the music world. How would we even go about understanding or finding out or discovering or proving whether or not this music is somehow, in this music in the experimental rock world, is somehow more dependent on music theory than experimental rock music in any other era? Like, is Swan's music somehow more based on music theory than like Mission of Burma or Sonic Youth or anything like that? Because, look, here's the thing. I don't really think you can simply tell me that that is true or untrue just by listening to the music that these artists are making, because The only way you could truly delineate whether or not music theory is playing a major role in the creative process of an artist is basically by understanding what their personal methodology is. The Loudness wars get a lot of flack, but most people wouldn't like songs with a lot of dynamic range. Most people don't sit down and listen to an album on a hi-fi system. They're listening with earbuds on the bus, at the gym, or in the office, and they'd get annoyed by the varying loudness. Musicians could consider releasing 2 mixes, one for plebs and one for snobs. I don't think it's necessarily a pleb thing or a snob thing personally. Look, we live in a very loud society, and people over the years, because of the Loudness war, have gotten adjusted to music being bricked out, being full of volume, being constantly engaging on the front of volume. And I don't know if there's really any rolling back the clock on that at this point. Certainly as an artist, you're free to come out with a record, to come out with a song that has tons of dynamic range. That is your choice. Do it. Go for it. If that is something you're passionate about, chase it. But as far as prevailing trends, I'm not sure if we're ever going to be able to sort of separate ourselves societally and as just a music listening audience from this addiction we have to compression, to volume, and everything that comes with that. Dynamics are great. Dynamics are cool. It's sad that they're not what they used to be in terms of their relevance or necessity to modern popular music, but And that has been this latest episode of Let's Argue. Thank you everyone for watching. You're the best, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Let's Argue forever.